Hey everyone, in today's video I am restoring this mid-century modern hutch. This hutch needs some work. The top coat is crumbling off. On the side someone tried to cover up some wood veneer damage. Didn't do a very great job, honestly. So I started by taking the hardware off. This hardware is a little weird. It doesn't have like a full piece of hardware. It's more of an outlined metal piece that goes on the drawer front. So I'm going to be painting those black, so I'm going to end up having to go in and paint part of the drawer front black that falls like in line with the hardware. So then I went in with my carbide scraper. I like to go in with my carbide scraper on mid-century modern every single time so I can get a feel for how thick the top coat is. A lot of times on mid-century modern pieces, they have a pretty thick top coat. Sometimes, like this piece, it'll be brittle and old and come off really easily. That was indeed what this one was like, so I ended up switching to my orbital pretty quickly. But I also like to use my carbide scraper in places such as this where it's just kind of hard to get the orbital in without damaging the wood veneer. The wood veneer is really thin, so on thinner pieces like this or edge pieces, I like to go in with my carbide scraper and then hand sand because it just makes it where you are a lot less likely to blow through the veneer and damage the piece further. For example, right here, I did the edge with my carbide scraper and then I hand sanded it and then I used my orbital. I always use 120 grit to start when it comes to wood veneer. Anything lower than that typically will blow through the veneer on the corners. When you're working with a piece that has wood veneer, you do not want to blow through. On one of my short clips I did recently, I actually painted a set of nightstands that someone had tried to flip and blew through the top of the veneer. So on here, there was a couple spots where someone had previously blown through the veneer and like tried to cover it up. So I'm gonna have to try and color match those areas the best I could. So I was very aware of when I was sanding to make sure I was just like extra careful. Thankfully, it sanded really quick. The orbital sander was probably the quickest part of this project. There was a lot of scraping and hand sanding in certain crevices. That part is what took the most. Typically, when I work with mid-century modern hutches, I try to not touch the inside because they're usually in good enough shape where I don't have to. Unfortunately, on this one, I had to sand 2 out of the 3 shelves. Once I started to sand, I realized that I had to pull the backing out the best I could. I tried to pull the whole backing out and it took quite a long time, but I eventually just had it pulled out enough where I could orbital sand the bottom shelf without like hitting the back panel, because I did not want to do that because I did not want to have to touch the back panel because it's honestly a pain to do that. And then on the second shelf up, I ended up just scraping and hand sanding where it touched the back panel. It's really difficult to pull these back panels out without breaking them or cracking any part of them. So I was trying to be super careful, but unfortunately I just had done a tiny bit. Now I'll be able to wood glue that, but that was when I really decided like, okay, I'm just gonna push it out here enough and call it good. I really did not want to damage the back panel piece. It's just hard to find these, and just I didn't want to have to like paint it or do anything. I just wanted this to be completely restored. So like I said, I sanded this one and then the middle one. The middle one had just like enough damage. And when I say damage, I really mean like the top coat and like some discoloration from that being worn. They sanded really well. They sanded pretty quick, which was pretty nice because a lot of times the top coat on these are so thick that it's a whole ordeal. And then I ended up hand sanding the two dowels in between. I really thought that was a neat part of this hutch, the two dowels, like the accent pieces. I have never come across that in a mid-century modern hutch. Now this does have glass doors. I have not shown that yet. They were off prior to the beginning of recording this, but I just thought that was a neat touch. So I noticed this hutch was just extra sawdust. Like, there was so much. I took out my shop vac and tried to clean up a little bit. And then I went in with my carbide scraper, like I said, and just what I'll do to get that top coat off and make it easier is I'll just go through and get that top coat off with the carbide scraper, and then I'll hand sand. Just all the spots where the orbital sander can't touch. I just found that I personally really like doing it this way. It's the most time efficient and it gets the best results. You don't really like scratch anything up or ruin anything. It was really easy to sand these down. I've noticed in older pieces, like specifically mid-century modern pieces, because I love to work on mid-century modern, that certain parts of the piece, they don't top coat it as much. Like, they don't put that protective, love my face in the corner. I have the funniest focus face. But anyway, a lot of times I'll find it in like the back legs in pieces. Like, you can see where during the manufacturing process, they'll put like the toner, but they won't do a top coat. You can tell that it'll be like sprayed and it won't reach. So I noticed that these ones didn't really have that top coat either, which I just thought that was kind of weird. But it's always cool to see like parts of pieces and be like, huh, that's how they did it. Like, that's how they made it. Which, speaking of that, so these two shelves and the dowels and the legs and certain other small parts of the hutch, I'm going to have to stain. Anything that's wood veneer, I will just do a new oil-based polyurethane, like top coat, to protect it and really bring out the natural shine of the wood veneer. But most mid-century modern pieces made, they used wood and they used wood veneer. And then during the manufacturing process, they actually took toner and they sprayed it over the whole piece to match. So it's 2025. When you start to restore, you will find that certain parts are made of real wood. And when you sand them down, you get rid of that toner. And you can't just stick a top coat on it and call it good, because it's going to be 5 times lighter than the wood veneer. I learned that pretty quick when I started my mid-century modern dresser journey. Definitely took some getting used to. I ended up mixing some stains and finding a pretty good color. Unfortunately, I'm almost out of that and I'm going to have to do it again. That's just kind of what I do. I get creative and I'm like, how do I do this? I probably should order some toner and do it that way. There's other YouTubers that I like to watch who do that. Transcend Furniture Gallery. She's like probably one of my favorite furniture people to watch. She uses toner. I really want to get my hands on. I just haven't ordered yet. Honestly, it's kind of expensive. Here you can see my neighbor scared me. I was mid-sanding and he came over. Super nice guy. He brought us some freeze-dried candy. But so then, yeah, I end up having to go through and stain to match. But as you can see here, I am just going through and once again using my carbide scraper. I just really like using that for the top coat to take off before I sand, because then if not, you're sanding for so much longer to get through that top coat before you really hit that like underneath color. Then it was on to the doors. These sanded down so quick. I wondered if someone took like restore a finish to them or something. I noticed that they just sanded a little differently. A lot of times with these pieces, people will take a restore finish and slap it on to try and even out the failing finish on them to make it look all the same color, but it actually is not good for the piece. But they still sanded really well. It didn't really cause much of an issue. So what I did here was I just took the back paneling, like nailed it back in. It was just stapled, and then I ended up taking and putting the hutch on its back. I like doing this when I work with doors or like tops of pieces typically, just because I feel like I get a better feel of the sander when I do that. I get more control on the orbital, and I know I sound like a broken record, but with mid-century modern and wood veneer, you need to have control of your orbital sander. You do not want to blow through the veneer. So I went through and I sanded what I could on my orbital. These sanded down really well. The bottom legs and that bottom trim piece you see are also going to need to be stained. I really did not want to have to take the doors off, because when you have older pieces you work with, having to take off doors, like, I don't know what it is about the old hinges, but 90% of the time they do not want to go back on the way that they come off. But so I ended up taking the legs off just so I could really get better, like a better, I just could sand it better, you know? Like, this is the first time I've ever seen mid-century modern legs that are turn ones that have a dowel piece. So when I say dowel, it's more of like a wood connector, right? So you see this long piece in between the two legs. It's essentially doweled in with wood glue that was failing. I also needed to re-wood glue it. Because the wood glue had failed, it kind of just was a little rickety. So I had a hard time getting off these screws, but I eventually did. So I got all of the legs off. I took this piece off. As you can see, I kind of was like, and it came right out, which was very nice. I used my orbital on the legs and the long piece, and then hand sanded where I needed to. It was a pain to get it back on. I ended up needing the help of my husband. I tried and I tried and I tried to put this back together, and I was not strong enough to be able to get the screw out. And so my wonderful husband came and helped me. But as you can see here, I sanded everything down and I made it all nice so I could then wood glue and put it back together. While I was waiting for my husband to come out, I ended up hand sanding the inside of these doors, where like you can take your fingers to open them up. I didn't touch the inside just because it didn't really need refinishing. It was pretty much fine. A lot of times the inside of stuff is pretty good shape, so I took my scraper and hand sanded. There was a lot of hand sanding that needed to be done on this one that I was just not really like expecting, and a lot of times in refinishing people forget about that stuff. So then I went in and I ended up taking the doors off. I really did not want to have to do that. I have yet to put them back on. I am recording this voiceover before I am fully done with the hutch. As I go, I try to edit, right? So hopefully it'll be fine. You will find out later on in this video. Part of the reason I ended up taking the doors off were these side pieces, right? So I couldn't get a good scraping done. I couldn't get a good hand sanding done with the doors being on. They were kind of in the way. I really didn't want to have to fight going through like that little crack, so I just needed to do it the right way. As you can see, I needed to tie my shoe. I needed to do it the right way, and I just needed to take the doors off so I could really get in there. Now I had to go through and later on stain all of this area too. I really feel like this is the kind of stuff that makes or breaks a piece when you're refinishing. I've seen where people don't really properly sand down these crevices and color match them with stain or toner if you have toner, And I've come across pieces that are redone like on Facebook Marketplace, and I see them and they end up having their own unique two-toned effect, right? But you can just tell that it's not the same. As I was taking these doors off, I realized that these come apart, which is super nice because it just made it a lot easier to really get in the crevices. These are like a 2-panel door type thing, a really cool design. So once I got all of the doors off, I went ahead and did the same thing I did to the one side, to the middle, and the other side. I just sanded and scraped and stuff, got it all ready for staining. Okay, here we go. So here's where I took my wood glue and I squeezed it in the little holes and I tried to put the base back together. Now, I did not show most of the parts in this video, but I spent quite a while trying to do this and I just couldn't get it. So that's where my husband helped me. You know, I really try to be an independent lady, but sometimes I am just not strong enough. I had a baby 7 months ago, and I'm still pretty weak. Need to start working out, but thankfully I have my husband. Don't know what I'd do without him. And here he is, just doing the job, getting it done right away. Easy peasy. So now I went in with my stain concoction. I'm literally at the end of the jar and it's pretty thick, but I'm getting it done. And I stain match the legs. I can't even tell you what stains I mixed together to make this. I think I mixed like walnut and pecan and red oak. I don't really know, but all I know is it matches super well to most mid-century modern walnut veneers, which is really nice. So then next I just went in and screwed back the middle piece and attached it where it needed to be done. Then you can see here I am going through and staining where I need to stain on the actual main piece. I stained the bottom trim and like the inside trims where the doors are going to go back. Then I went ahead and sanded the drawers down. They sanded really nicely. You have to be really careful with drawers with mid-century modern pieces and wood veneer and stuff because really easy to blow through the veneer. Out of the whole piece, I'd say like the edge banding and the drawers are the easiest. These sanded really nicely. So I know that this video is kind of like short, but I promise you, I was out here like all day, and at this point, I was really cold. I had a super bad headache, I was freezing, and I was like, I could see the home stretch, the staining part. I knew things were getting serious, and I was just like, let's get it done. These stained really nicely. I got really lucky, and all the pieces I needed to stain stained really nicely. Every so often you'll get like a piece that's just, I don't know why, it just doesn't take the stain, and it'll get like just so frustrating. Looking back on it, I probably should have sanded this side first before I stained, just so the sawdust didn't get in the stain. It was fine because it was the side and it was like away from the stuff I stained, but just a note, don't do what I did. I really don't know why I did it this way. I think probably because I had the hutch on its back, so I couldn't sand that side, and I also wanted to stain. I knew I wasn't going to be outside much longer, and I just wanted to get it stained so it could like have more time to dry. But don't do what I did. Try and sand the whole piece down first, please. This is like definitely a oops, whoops kind of thing. It's kind of hard to see from this angle, but this was the side where the veneer was blown through really bad and they color matched it, as I showed in the beginning of the clip. I went over that part actually with the stain, and I'm going to let it dry before I go through and color match it, because I'm hoping that that underlying stain will just like help give it more depth to match. A lot of times the wood they used underneath the wood veneer was way lighter, and it just makes it frustrating to have to color match because just the difference in the tone. So then I went in with wood glue and I just pulled this little piece up. It was pretty loose, so I just put a little bit of wood glue underneath, and then I ended up using blue painter's tape to tape it down. When it comes to small like issues like this with the veneer peeling up, you don't need to like have a big wood clamp or anything. Some painter's tape where you like pull it tight like that usually gets the job done for it to dry. So then after that, I wiped it all down and went through with this clear gloss varnish. I was not a huge fan. It takes a while to dry. I think I'm just going to stick with some regular oil-based poly. What I was talking about earlier, you can see here that one strip I forgot to stain to match. So I had to do that. Then I assembled the doors and put them back in. This next clip is my 6-year-old recording for me because I needed someone to record. But hey, he did a great job for a 6-year-old, right? Next, my husband recorded this, spray painted the hardware black, and then I went through and hand painted the inside like I said I was gonna, and then this is the final result. For the color matching, I just used oil-based paints and then glossed over it. Sorry I didn't get that on camera. It was not perfect, but sometimes that happens with these pieces, so I think I did a great job bringing it back to life. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you.